In this video, we're going to learn about a new way to create Python lists called a list comprehension. And as well as being very useful to us, this is also something which is very familiar because a list comprehension is very similar to using set builder notation like we did in Math 5 last term. So a set comprehension is another word for a use of set builder notation, like when people write the set of all things x squared for x in n. So they mean the set containing 0 squared and 1 squared and 2 squared and 3 squared and so on. You can do a very similar thing in Python and it's called a list comprehension. So let's begin with an example list comprehension like the one we've got here. So this is very similar to the set comprehension I wrote on the last slide. This list consists of all the things of the form x squared when x goes from 0 up to 4 inclusive. So it'll contain 0 squared, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared and 4 squared. And the syntax is really simple. First of all, you write the general form of the thing which you want in your list, and then you write for, and then your variable, and then in, and then the list, which provides the values for your variable x. So that will just give you 0 squared, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, and 4 squared. Okay, so let's try another example, which will actually be the same thing. There's no reason that you have to write out the list of values for your variable explicitly. You could use a range, for example. So range 5 produces the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this list comprehension will be exactly the same as the previous one. Finally, you can even add conditions to your list comprehension. So let's say you wanted the squares of all the whole numbers between 0 and 9 inclusive, but actually you only wanted the squares of the even numbers. So you can do that by using the same list comprehension syntax we've just done before. So this would give you just the squares of the numbers from 0 up to 9. And then you can add a condition. So you say if, and then you impose the condition you want. So x%2 equal to 0, that would be true when x is divisible by 2. So this would filter out just the even numbers. So this will give us the squares of all the even numbers from 0 up to 9. So 0 squared, 2 squared, 4 squared, 6 squared, and 8 squared. You can see that that is indeed what we get. Now, list comprehensions are actually even more flexible than this because you can use more than one variable in your list comprehension. For example, if you want the sum of any number from 1, 2, 3 and any number from 4, 5 and 6, then you could do that with a list comprehension where you had two variables x and y, and you looked at all things of the form x plus y for x in the list containing 1, 2 and 3 and for y in the list containing 4, 5 and 6. So that will do x, that will produce all the sums 1 plus 4, 1 plus 5, 1 plus 6, 2 plus 4, 2 plus 5, 2 plus 6, and 3 plus 4, 3 plus 5, 3 plus 6. As you see, when I run it, we get all of those 9 sums. So this can be very useful. I mean, this doesn't actually add any functionality which we didn't have before. It's perfectly possible to create these lists without using list comprehensions at all. But it can be very convenient at times, and it can be a very convenient, concise, and easy way to express the things that you want to express in Python. Let's look at an example where this is going to be particularly useful to us and give us a really concise and clear way to express ourselves in Python. So for example, let's say we wanted to plot a graph of a function. So let's say the function y equals sine x between x equals 0 and x equals 1. So one way which we're going to do this in the future, so in one of the final parts of Math 11, is to do it by generating first of all a list of all the x values and then a list of all the y values. So the x values would be, say, x equals 0 and 0.01, 0.02, 0.03 and so on, all the way up to 1. And then we might say, okay, I want the corresponding y values, so I want sine of 0 and sine of 0.01 and sine of 0.02. So that will give me a bunch of x and y coordinates for points on my graph of y equals sine x. Well, how can we create those in an easy way? First of all, we don't yet know how to get things like the sine function in Python. You can do this with a special keyword called import. So if you do import math, it lets you do things like math.sine and math.cos. It creates those functions. We'll learn more about that later, but for now, just imagine that this is a special way to get hold of the sine and cosine functions. So once we've run this, we're able to actually do some we're actually able to use these functions. So let's think about the x's first of all. So let's create all numbers 0, 0.01, 0.02, and so on in a list. So these will be the x coordinates for the points on our graph. So we'll call this list x's, and we'll do this with the list comprehension. So we could do this by saying, well, I want the numbers 0 up to 100, and I want to multiply those by 0.01. So we might do this as 0.01 times n for n in range 101. Okay, that would give us 0.01 times 0, 0.01 times 1, 0.01 times 2, and so on up to 0.01 times 100. So all of the numbers between all of the numbers 0, 0.01, 0.02 up to 1. And those could be the x coordinates on our graph. So how can we now create the y coordinates? So I want the y coordinate corresponding to 0 will be sine 0, and the y coordinate corresponding to 0.01 will be sine 0.01, and so on. So what I could do is just do y should be math.sine of x for x in x's. Okay, really easy and really clear. That will generate all of those things. And if I run this, those now exist. So let's just print some of them out. Let's print out the y's so we can see what's going on. You get an enormous list which looks approximately right. So if we print out the x's, then this is even clearer. You can see we really have got the numbers that we wanted.